Okay, so here we are. And speaking of dogs, a lot of Israelis have dogs. Um, and this one place where we went, this community called Dovev, I think is where we saw this guy in his 50s, who just did all out chesed for anyone he could find as far as when the Chayalim were stationed there. Always had hot meals for them. And had these two little dogs that he was taking care of. Had to constantly shoo them out of the Chadar Ochel because they gave us lunch. And he just told us that he and his wife are expecting their first children, the twins. And it was just so very emotional. Okay, so anyway, so the first question that we had is it permissible to raise a dog and to give it non-kosher food? And the question that was asked was, I want to get a dog because I want security. So the first thing that Rav Sharaga had said, he was not so keen on owning a dog, that he quotes from the Mishnah in Bava Kama that lo yigadel adam et hakelev ela im ken hayakosher b'shalsheles. A person should not own a dog unless it's constantly tied up with a chain. And the reason is not just because you're worried that the dog is going to bite people, but even if he just barks, even if his bark is worse than his bite, that's also a problem because it could cause a woman who is very fearful, who might be pregnant, it could cause her to miscarry from fright.
That begs the question, would chaining the dog help the bark issue?
It'll help it in the sense that when a woman sees a dog that's barking, that's tied on a chain, she's not going to be as frightened. Yeah. Yeah. And then the Gemara says that you're allowed to untie the dog if at night to let it roam if you live on a border city. And Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol had added that if a person raises dogs, it's like he's raising pigs. And the nafkamina of him comparing that, of making that comparison, is that if a person raises pigs, he's cursed by the rabbis. And again, the Gemara tells that story about a woman who actually had miscarried. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, asur legadol kelev ra, you're not allowed to own a bad dog. A bad dog means a dog who's very scary. Elim kain hu asur b'shal shalo shel barzel, v'kasher bahem, da'az ein chashash shema yinshach, v'gam anashim lo mefachados mimenu kevin shu kasher v'lo mapilos, aval be'ir asmucha l'svar mutar. Right, so the Shulchan Aruch says at a border city, which, and by the way, I can really appreciate it. You live at a border city. That's where we went. We went to the Lebanese border, and the idea of having a dog there makes a lot of sense. Because maybe not so much anymore where no one's actually crawling across the border, but who knows? What happened on October 7th is that there were guard dogs. Unfortunately, Hamas killed the dogs also. But they are there for security, especially when you're near a border of a hostile neighbor. The cause of Hayam shel Shlomo shehayared lidvar Hashem lo yigado klavim ra'im af b'makom sheyesh chashash hefsid mama. Elarak b'chashash sakanas nefashos. The Maharshal says that it's better not to have a dog if the only concern is that it'll be security for burglary, but if you're worried about your safety, then you are allowed to have the dog. But it seems like is that if you're talking about a smaller dog, that's not a Doberman or
Rottweiler.
a Rottweiler or a pit bull, right? Then it would be, especially a smaller dog who's docile, that the Mishnah was not prohibiting. And then he quoted from Rav Vosner, V'shut shevet halevi kasef de'etzem hachzakasu shel kelev shelo letzarech l'maser reikim v'lachein ein legadel klavim. He felt that there's a secondary issue about having a dog, and that he calls it a maseh reikim, folly, something that vacuous people. That's literally what it means.
Emptiness?
Yeah, empty people. Empty people have dogs. People who have full lives, relevant lives, do not have dogs. Empty people have dogs. And then he writes, if you're, as far as the barking and biting issue, even if you write a warning dog on the entrance to your house or to your backyard, he said it's still not something that he's prepared to permit. But if it's in factories or other industrial areas where people are unlikely to go there at night, then he's more prepared to be lenient. Okay, so we really will have to maybe look into this a little bit further, see what some of the more modern poskim have to say. Rav Vosner was a modern day poskim. Yeah.
What about a situation like you have, which is not mentioned here? I know for kids with disabilities, it's great therapy.
Yeah, a therapy dog. Therapy dogs are amazing. They have them.
Therapy for the parents, but
yeah. They have them in, first of all, they have them in all the hospitals in Israel. You have therapy dogs. When my son was in the hospital long term, he had a therapy dog. They're really just amazing. They really are helpful. So it's really clearly
for the blind too.
And right, a service dog. The funny thing is that people are using the title service dogs. You can get your dog certified as a service dog very easily. For a few bucks. You pay someone for a few bucks, you can get your dog called a service dog, and people are bringing them on planes now. And
emotional.
Yeah.
But also like that, I remember my grandfather telling me, and my parent, like the family, that in Poland, Goyim have dogs.
Goyim have dogs,
Right.
right? And the German Shepherd was
the
the dog of the Nazis. Yeah. Yeah.
This is in the 20s.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
the late teens. This is before World War I. Sorry.
Yeah.
Before World War
Yeah.
I.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, as far as buying them non-kosher dog food, Kasav Maran b'Shulchan Aruch, and this is what we were in the middle of. Kol davar shaser min haTorah afal pi shemuter b'hanaim hu davar miyuchad l'maychol asur lasos bo schora. So we had seen that you're not allowed to do business with anything that's non-kosher, even though it's a non-kosher item that is mutter bahana, that you're allowed to benefit from. In other words, let's say pig meat or treif, meaning meat that was not slaughtered properly. So let's say a person is in the food business and he wants to be able to sell a certain kind of meat, but it's just not kosher, and he can profit off of it. So the Shulchan Aruch writes that you're not allowed to be in a business where you're buying and selling non-kosher food. And the Ramah adds an additional chumrah, that even to buy non-kosher food for your non-Jewish workers is also asur. Now, we'll see if all the poskim agree with that. As we had started to see, not all the poskim agree with this Ramah. According to the Ramah, it really then shouldn't make a difference. If you can't buy non-kosher food to feed to your workers, then the same argument should apply to dogs as well. Because of all hashach lo yadati al masamchu rabim mibnei amenu shalokchim tarfus kedei lahachil hapoyalim hanochrim. And the Shach writes, he says, I have no idea what so many Jews rely upon, because this is a common practice that they purchase non-kosher food to feed to their non-Jewish workers. And as you can imagine, especially years ago, the differential in price between kosher and non-kosher food was huge. V'ratza l'chalek bein kona, and it's still, the differential is still quite significant. V'ratza l'chalek bein kona kedei lihistacher d'zeh aser, uvein hakona kedei la'achilo l'po'alav shemuter. And therefore the Shach disagrees with the Rama. He says, while I agree that doing business with non-kosher food is aser, I feel that feeding non-kosher food to your workers is permitted. Amnam b'mate Yehonatan, dacha divrei hashach, the cost of the gam b'poi alim shu koine lehem treif tarfus, osa kain kevin shezeh bezol, umali mistaker b'konu mocher, o konu lepoilov shu aser, b'chizek is divrei Rama. The Mate Yehonasan disagrees with the Shach and strengthens the words of the Rama. Ultimately, why are you feeding non-kosher food to your Gentile workers? Because you want to save money. So if it's usher to profit from non-kosher food by engaging it in buying and selling, then the same argument of profiting from non-kosher food would apply if you're buying it for your workers. V'hapri chadash ratza l'chalek, the davka kishakona dvarim timeim legadlam beveso kedei lachilam lepoyelav az asers dezedoim elischar. The Pri Chadash says it would depend. It would depend on how you are purchasing the non-kosher food. If you're purchasing non-kosher food and storing it in your home in order to feed it to your workers, so then it would be aser. Avaliknos nevelos utrefes kadei lahachilam lepol of takef. But if you're not storing it in your house, but you purchase it in order to feed it immediately to your workers, in other words, you want to treat all the guys in your office to McDonald's, right? And you're not going to eat it. It's just that you want to be able to. They're working overtime. Let's say they're doing inventory in the warehouse, and you want to get them dinner. So then you're not mechuyev to buy them dinner from the kosher restaurant. What do? Do you get them all kosher? No, okay. So you can get them all McDonald's, and it's much cheaper. Mutter dezen nechshav la'achila v'lo lischora. He says that's mutter because that's considered to be purchasing it for food and not for profiting. And you're not storing it like you would regular merchandise. Okay.
You have it delivered, you wouldn't go pick it up because it could be more something.
I don't know if it's more a sign for you to pick it up from McDonald's. I'm not convinced that that's going to be us.
No one picks up food anymore. It's all delivered.
Yeah, right. You would get it. You get, or you can get it. Yeah, right.
So the Jewish area, that would have been allowed.
I'm not convinced because it's something that's so obvious. You're walking in with your yarmulke, and
Walking out with some
You walk
pizza
into a
boxes and,
You walk
Yeah.
into a Tim Hortons, you get a coffee, and they're selling traders, you get a coffee.
no, you have a coffee in your hand, but you're
No,
walking
but
out
you're
with some
walking
pizza
into Tim
boxes.
Hortons, they're
about-
selling pork sandwiches there on the side too.
No, but if you
right,
walk into
right.
the
But
bar-
Ron is saying, what if you're walking out with a stack of boxes from Pizza? Okay, and
I was in the Tim Hortons once and I bought the whole box of donuts for the workers at the office too. And the guy, obviously Jewish, my friend said to me, oh, I didn't know the donuts were kosher.
Yeah, see, there you go. That's good.
Obviously, he doesn't.
Actually, they are.
No.
They're kosher.
they are kosher.
Yeah, but the problem is they use the oven. They
Uh-huh.
have the certificate. I think they are COR. All the muffins and the donuts. The problem is they use the same oven to bake them.
So you could theoretically buy them
If
raw.
If you buy them raw, you can get them raw, they're kosher.
Uh-huh.
But that's.
It's good to know, thank you.
Aval harav pri toar isig ala pri chadash. The pri toar disagrees with the pri chadash because of the in chiluk kevin degam kishakona lachilu miyad koines atreif biglal shu yoter zol. B'zenechshav kischora sha'aser. He says no. He's more machmir, and he says whether you buy it in order to feed to them immediately or whether you buy it and store it, you're profiting in both cases from the non-kosher food, and therefore it's aser. Nimsa dahadavar shanui b'machlokes haposkim. So its bottom line is it's a machlokes. Dilafi harama asr lahachil klavim oichel lo kasher l'das hashach mutter. It's machloikis, the Rama and the Shach. The Shach is lenient and the Rama is machmir. Lefi zeh, din zeh yeh talui b'machloikis haposkim ha'im mutter lihistacher b'dvarim temeim hu midiorais or midiorabanan. He says, and we actually had gone through this whole tshuva, but it's good to review it. Is it there's a machlokas in the poskim whether peddling in non-kosher food is rabbinically prohibited or biblically prohibited. The das hatoisvis v'od poskim who the iser zehum deoraisa, v'lachen yesh lahachmer kevin the suffik deoraisa l'chumra. Some poskim say, including Tosfos, that this is a biblical prohibition to peddle in or to profit off of non-kosher merchandise. And therefore, since there's a machlokus, whether you're allowed to feed it to your workers and / dogs, you should be machmir because it's an iser deoraisa. Umasam yeshnam poskim shesovrim shu midrabanan. But there are a number of poskim who disagree and say that it's only a rabbinic prohibition. Lefi divrayim yesh lahakil bazeh kevin de b'shel sofrim helachachar amekel. And therefore, according to them, you could be lenient because when you have a rabbinic prohibition that is disputed whether it's forbidden or not, so then you can be lenient and go like the poskim who are more lenient. But now, by the way, this doesn't apply in all cases. You can't always say, well, it's only Asr de Rabbanan, and I found one shita that says that it's not a problem in this case, so I can go and be lenient. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a preponderance of poskim who are roughly evenly divided in this matter. Also, if you, let's say, always paskin like a certain posek, you can't pick and choose so easily. So there are limitations to this type of dispensation that, well, if it's only an Isser D'Rabbanan, and we have some who say yes and some who say no, I can go according to those who are Makel. But in this case, Rav Shirag is prepared to say you can be Makel according to those poskim. The Harashba Kosav Sheisser who Machmas Chashash D'Shema Yavel Lechol Mimenu. The Rashba says that the whole reason why you're not allowed to peddle in non-kosher food is because we're worried that you might end up eating some of it inadvertently. So therefore, when it comes to dog food, you can certainly be lenient according to the Rashba, because the vast majority of human beings are not likely to eat dog food. And therefore, there's no concern that you may end up coming to eat from it. So the bottom line of this tshuva is that we have a difference of opinion among the poskim whether it's permissible to own a dog or not. If it's for service to provide psychological, eye-seeing or hearing service dogs, then those dogs are highly trained. They don't pose a threat. They're not going to bark. And so therefore, there's no question that that's permissible. The question is, can I own a dog who might frighten people and cause damage as a result? So that the poskim say that if this dog really is a wild dog and barks at everybody and is very scary, you're not supposed to own such a dog because you could inadvertently cause damage. And the fear of that a woman could have that could potentially cause her to miscarry is real. That's not something that's imagined. Women who are overcome by fright can miscarry even today. That's a real phenomenon. And so a person shouldn't dismiss it as like medieval medicine. It's not medieval medicine. The women who are in scary situations still miscarry. So therefore, that's a serious issue. If, however, your dog is well trained, and then you add to that your need for your own personal security, so then there's reason to be lenient. And certainly if your animal is of a smaller breed, where people who see that little fluffy dog are not going to be intimidated or scared, so then it's certainly permissible.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
to something you said about profiting, there's a fellow in the community here, Larry Garber, he's open about it, but you must know him. He owned a number of McDonald's franchises, a few of them, McDonald's franchises, and then he became from, and he's very serious Jew, and I think he went to Rabbi David Cohn, to get a, how do I deal with this now? But he still owns something. So how is he, even if you brought in a non-Jewish partner, it still seems you're still gaining some profit from here. So how would you get around that?
So there are ways to maneuver this issue. Years ago, there was an article published by a guy I know about whether a Jew can own stock in McDonald's. And there, the consensus of the poskim is that you're allowed to purchase stock in non-kosher ventures as long as you don't have a controlling portion in the business. It could be the argument, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily what David Cohen paskined, but it could be that in a situation where you can't, first of all, you don't have any say over what kind of food is served, but it's just a commodity that comes from the distributor and is served through your store. So then there's not as much of you're sort of more removed, even though you have a controlling say in the functioning of the company as far as hiring employees and firing employees. You don't have a say as to what kind of food they serve and so forth. So it could be that there's more reason to be lenient. It could be that one of the heterim that Rav David Cohen relied upon is that since this person was entrenched in this business as his parnasa, he's not obligated to give it up just because he became Shomer Torah mitzvahs. And maybe he was relying on the fact that it's only an Isser D'Rabbanan, and in order to preserve this person's Yiddishkeit, he gave him that kind of dispensation. I'm not saying what all of the arguments were, but I could definitely hear that in a situation like this, there's room to be lenient when a person becomes a Baal Tshuva and discovers that all of a sudden he may be doing something that is rabbinically prohibited by owning a bunch of restaurants. I think it's more problematic if it's a mom and pop restaurant, like I own an Italian restaurant or a Middle Eastern restaurant, and I've kept it open on Shabbos all these years, and now all of a sudden I become a Baal Tshuva, that becomes more of a problem. And I don't really see how it's going to be possible to maintain that business as a non-kosher open on Shabbos business.
The Shabbos or the kashrus?
It's both. It's both. It's keeping your business open on Shabbos and then serving non-kosher food. And especially since a significant percentage of your clientele is Jewish when you're opening, let's say, a Middle Eastern restaurant, this chain Mi Vami, which is owned by Israelis. I guarantee you, in every major Jewish city, there are Israelis who are not religious, who have Mediterranean restaurants that are not kosher, and or not only Mediterranean, but traditional kosher food restaurants where they serve matzo ball soup and they have delis and things like that. So those are owned by Jews.
They call it kosher style.
Kosher style, and it's a series.
There's one on Third Street called Yesha Mama.
Yeah. So that's a much more serious problem, because number one, it's open on Shabbos, and you can circumvent the open on Shabbos deal by having a non-Jewish partner, having them draw up a shtar, but still to be open in a Jewish neighborhood, serving the Jewish community on Shabbos, even that you won't be able to circumvent by having a non-Jewish partner. And so like that is fraught with difficulties. So you can ask your friend, like, what kind of heter did he get? There's a fellow who I just got an email from the other day. He was the guy, he's a Yid, very traditional. I'm not sure if he's 100% Shomer Torah mitzvahs, but he was the one who started this whole business with halal foods.
David Mueller.
Is that his name?
Yeah, he sold it years ago. He's from Niagara Falls, and they own slaughterhouses, so they have the meat connection. And he came up with that idea of doing halal. He did it for years, or he finally sold it.
Yeah, David Mueller. Is it Mueller?
Actually, you'll be here this Shabbos.
He says, "Good morning, Rabbi Kropkin. Joyce and I will be at Bayat this Shabbos for the Kohen Offer." Yeah, I look forward to seeing you. So yeah, he's a great guy. He gave me a copy of his book called The Jew in the Mosque. Yeah. So
So I don't understand what did he do?
he owned a food service business. I think he sold.
He was a manufacturer from beginning to end where he manufactured halal meat and sold it to supermarkets that sold it. You know, you walk in, you see at the halal section, you'd see it in supermarkets. So he was working with the halal mashgichim, with the rabbanim, with, you know. all
Not
those
the Rabbanim, yeah.
With the vadav of imams.
The Vadha
Or do
Imamim.
they have politics? He worked with the Sunnis, not with the Shias.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think he sold that
Yes,
business.
he sold it about 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's a good thing he did because
Oh, today, he'd be
they would have beheaded him. Yeah. Okay, anyway.
Robert, what about the Passover, the grains for the food, for the dog food? We look for grain-free dog food for our dogs.
So that's even a greater problem because arguably non-kosher food is only an Isser D'Rabbanan to store it and to peddle in it. But benefiting from chametz on Pesach is an Isser D'Oraisa without any reservation whatsoever. There's no one that holds that it's only D'Rabbanan. So there, and owning it and benefiting from it is an Isser D'Oraisa. So there's no heter whatsoever, even if it's just for your animals, to be able to feed your dog. One thing that some people do is that they will give their dog to a kennel and sell it to the kennel, you know, doing like a mechiras chametz, but instead of
just.
What do you mean?
Why? Because you're giving hana to your dog?
you're getting hana because your property is
You own- and you own the
preserved.
grain.
If you keep it outside.
It doesn't make a
You
difference.
sell it, you're hefker, doesn't.
How
I don't know.
you're selling something that you're still benefiting from. You're benefiting from chametz. It's not possible. But I will tell you something interesting. Rav Moshe has a tshuva, and we'll have to close it, that if you own a warehouse full of chametz, and your business is to sell chametz, and it's got to stay open on Pesach. I think I told you the story before about the 99-cent only stores in California. It was owned by a Jewish guy, and he wasn't from, but he agreed to sell his chametz. It's a huge chain, and I sold his chametz for him. But so then the question is, well, isn't he now guilty of geneva? Because he's stealing chametz that doesn't belong to him and selling it and profiting from it. And Rav Moshe says that it's better to sell it and be guilty of geneva than to own chametz on Pesach.
Oh, that's sort
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. All right, we'll hold it here for today.
You had a dog growing up. What did you do?
My dog.
I think we gave it just meat scraps and matzah.
Keep it regular.